I don't know if you can see in the background. You can see two
Yeah.
of my
All
heroes
right,
there.
there we go.
That's it. Let me go.
Hey, hey,
Wait. Yeah.
hey, everyone. Welcome to the Really Charlie podcast. Today's guest is a mentor, a leader, an icon for the city of New Bedford, Mr. Lee Charlton, former president of NAACP, also plant engineer at the Greater New Bedford Regional Voltech High School here in New Bedford, along with a few years at New Bedford High School. Also, definitely one of my mentors growing up, and I'm very, very honored to have him here to speak with us and share some stories with us. Hello, Mr. Charlton. How you doing?
Great. Good to see you, Charlie.
Yes, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being a guest on the Really Charlie podcast. And just to let you know, the name Really Charlie comes from my wife because when I do things around the house or say things to her, one of the first things she says is "Really, Charlie." So I'm stuck with it.
That's what I told them up at the school there. They had a memorial for all the people who that worked at the Greater New Bedford Regional Vocational had passed, so they had a function outside there where they had a commemoration to them. And I told the superintendent at the time that when I worked for a vocational, I was a very responsible person. I had a very responsible job because everything that went wrong, I was responsible. And she's still laughing.
Yeah, that is funny.
And just you mentioned I was plant engineer at New Bedford High School, but the fact is, I was my feet were the first 2 feet in New Bedford High School when they were building that, and I also the same 2 feet were the first in New Bedford Vocational. Because
Wow.
that's all. My wife was the one that told me when she saw it advertised. She says, "Isn't this what you did in the Air Force?" And I said, "For 8 years, that's exactly what I did. I was plant engineer or facilities engineer." And that's where I went to school for and did all my training, even with the Navy. They sent me to school with the Navy with the Seabees, and I like their motto: "We've done so much for so long with so little. Now we can do anything with nothing." And the difficult we do right away, the impossible takes a little longer. So once you get an attitude like that, you can do just about anything.
Exactly. Exactly. Most people get stopped by their own self, their own.
You don't
Um,
know what you can do till you try it.
exactly.
And
And,
nothing beats a try but a failure. If you don't try,
mhm.
you're going to fail every time.
And I'm only trying to fail once, so I'm not trying
Just once, huh?
to. Yeah, just once.
Well, you've done
the
you've done a great job so far.
Yeah, we thanks to guys like you and women that are out there also. I love the fact that majority of people in my life that taught me pretty much um what I know has been a bunch of women, a bunch of
Hey,
strong women. And
I mirror that. I was raised by a strong woman in West Virginia because men were all in the coal mine, and I had the toughest grandmother in the world. You know, she could kill a brick. And this lady would not take no for an answer. And she was the one that told me, don't let them use you or abuse you. And I absolutely believe in that. She told me, you make up your mind to do something, just stick with it. And I
so,
absolutely, when my step grandfather had a stroke, and I had to, at the age of 10, I had to step in his shoes and do things around the house that most people don't do, like uh, carrying a half a ton of coal, in a couple 40-pound buckets. But it made me stronger than the other kids my age. That came in handy when they tried to bully me. But no, Charlie, you've done well, and
thank you.
I'm extremely proud to know you and your family, and all of your cousins and uncles. And I work with a few of them, and I know many of them from just being in New Bedford.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know,
we.
if you've been in as many groups as I've been in New Bedford, they put a few in the booklet I shared with you. But
Hmm.
I had to be in at least 10, 11 organizations. And the year that I was in the hospital getting my back worked on, I had my calendar and I was scheduled to show, appear, or view 125 community activities.
Hmm.
125. And then I discovered why I was in the hospital. I was overdoing things. And I
Hmm.
should have taken care of my back earlier. But again, if you don't try anything, you can't accomplish anything.
So true.
And
And
I looked at all of the people in our community and what they have done for New Bedford, and especially women. And I can tell you that most of the people who worked on my committees and got things done, by and large, were women. Because
hmm
if they said they were going to show up, they did. And
exactly.
you didn't have to call them. They called you and told me what they have done and what they were planning on doing. So I can tell you that New Bedford Historical Society and all, that started because Helen Gomes, ACA, came to see
Hmm.
me and they were forming that and they wanted a place to have a meeting. And I agreed to let them have the meetings at the NAACP. And that's how I got involved because Helen was in there. And then I met some of the brightest people in New Bedford, and 95% of them were women. And, anyone who's taking credit now should have been around when these women were fighting for that. And I understand that they're going to have the historic park dedicated this year when Frederick Douglass and now has taken his rightful place in New Bedford. And I got involved really when I went to a meeting up in Maine, and as I walked in, I saw them dedicating a monument to Frederick Douglass in Lynn, Massachusetts. Then I wanted to know. Well, I asked the fellow who was the president of the Lynn branch, what did Frederick Douglass do in Lynn? Well, he wrote the narrative of a slave there. And of course, once he wrote the book, he was still a fugitive slave. They knew where he was, so that's when he left and went to England.
Hmm.
And I can tell you that I told a fellow right then and there, Abner Darby, I said, "You just got me in trouble." And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "If they've got a monument to him in Lynn, he got his name in New Bedford, and I'm gonna have one next year." And that was '94. In '95, we had that monument. Okay.
Wow, that's awesome. How long was that process? Was it a couple
Well,
of
it took
years?
a year. Took a year because I announced what I was going to do, and I spoke to uh, Mr. Rogers, who was a teacher at New Bedford, Greater New Bedford Regional, and he taught literature, so he knew of Frederick Douglass. And then I spoke to the mayor at the time, and I spoke to a few other people. I was on that committee to do something with this, and it was my idea to get Fred Marcel, who portrayed Frederick Douglass. That's what he did. That was his own time. He was an actor. And when I found out what he charged, because I had a videotape of what he charged for a performance, and that he would charge us $9,000 for the 9 performances he was going to do in New Bedford, then I set about to raise the money, and I went to uh, the school superintendent of schools in New Bedford at the time, and gave him a copy of that videotape, and he agreed to do it.
Hmm.
And that started the ball rolling. But then I found out there was a one-man, two-act play that normally they did, after they did the individual ones at the school. So I had took a week's vacation, rented a car so I could take him, escort him around to the 9 schools, and do his performance. And the car needed to have enough room in the trunk so that he could put his all his paraphernalia in there. And found him a place, the skipper over in Fairhaven, a place, and he was a vegetarian. So I went down at the airport. My wife and I picked him up, brought him back. set him up with some food, and I was his liaison in New Bedford for the week that he was here, and he did the 9 plays, but I tried to get the group to go to several banks with me to
Hmm.
secure the additional $5,000, and they were a little hesitant to do it, and so I says I'll do it myself. And at the time, I just happened to be a cooperator on the Compass Bank, and I went to see the president of the bank, Real Britain, and I gave him a copy of Frederick Douglass' performances, as done by Fred Marcel.
Hmm.
And through him and the people in the bank, I got a check for $5,000 for that. And I had to be the MC, but nobody else was interested in being the MC at the Zeitarian, one man, two act play. And we were going to have a reception afterwards. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I got $300 donation from the Chamber of Commerce. I went to vocational and I had them make me some trays of food, which I put in the back of that big vehicle, and I took them down to the theater myself. And I tell you, with all the things we got done that week, it was a great week. And I noticed to Fred Marcel that when he was talking to youngsters about Frederick Douglass and how at 6 months of age he was taken away from his mother so they would not bond and given to what they call a mammy. And then his mother was sold to another plantation owner. And Frederick
Hmm.
Douglass' mother he only got to see his mother uh, 2 or 3 times in life because this other plantation was 12 miles away from where Frederick Douglass was being raised by this surrogate mother. And but she made an effort, and they had to work from sun up to sundown. She had to walk 12 miles. So that's the difference between New Bedford and Fall River. To
Hmm.
spend maybe a couple hours and get up and be back in the fields the next morning when the sun came up. Only a
Hmm.
mother would do that.
Hmm.
And so he knew very little of his mother, but he knew that she did everything she could do to see that he was well. But most people, if they read that story now, it's required reading in New Bedford, finally. And you learn so much from that person. And I told people, and I repeat it, Frederick Douglass said it, an education unsuits a person to be a slave. And that's still true.
Hmm.
I said in some of my writings, unsuits them to be a slave, a flunky, or otherwise taken advantage of. And that's why, based on anything that we do, everyone needs a vocation. You got to trade your skills or your education for something redeemable in the form of cash because this is America. And America is the land of the free and home of the buck. And now
Hmm.
you've heard the other play on that, but you dispute the fact that if you don't have a buck in America, nothing is free. And you're going to have to figure out a way of getting some money because it's a means of exchange. And again, people quote things, but sometimes out of context. And they says money is the root of all evil. No, the way I heard it originally from the Bible was the love of money is the root of all evil,
Hmm.
because you're going to need a means of exchange anyway. But if you love it to the point where you disrespect, dishonor, and do things of a bad nature to other people, that's the problem. And that's the problem where we find in America why my relatives came here chained to the planks. Because although they escaped tyranny and from the royalty in England, they came here and what the first thing that they want? Free labor. So, no, Charlie, uh, what goes around comes around.
Hmm. It it's amazing that it took from 1838 to 1995 to get something in New Bedford, um, with with Frederick Douglass, in a right place. There's been other things that we see, but to get that monument there is very,
Well,
very
he did
important.
not have an advocate. I asked people, I said, you probably couldn't give away the money all day if you tried. What is the inscription on that monument? You notice it is facing the south.
Hmm.
On the lawn as you come out of the door, it's facing south. And I know what's on it because I picked it of all the things that he said are worthy of repeating. And it says, as for me, I prefer death to hopeless bondage. And I think most people would.
Yes,
You'd rather be dead than be somebody else's slave. And that's what Frederick Douglass said, and that's what he meant.
so true. It it is so many different, historic people that come in and out of the city, for centuries, and it's very important that we pass on that history to the young ones because you think just think back about maybe just 5 years from 5 years from this date, um, 5 years ago rather, that some people already forgot about that stuff. They
Yeah.
forgot about things, and so maintaining the history is very, very important, especially
History
some.
is important because otherwise you will repeat the mistakes.
Hmm.
There was a second tablet produced out of that same mold, and I purchased that uh, for myself on behalf of the NAACP because I wrote the check. And the sculptor was Reno Pisano.
Hmm.
And I asked him, the one that's sitting in front of City Hall, um, that cost the city $2,800. And Reno told me if I wanted one and I was going to pay for it, he let me have it for $2,400. And I thought, the time was time to do it. So I wrote a check, and then I had a bright idea. I put it in my newsletter for the people who wanted to be mentioned on a separate tablet, giving them credit for donating to that. If they would donate money, I would put their name on a placard right next to Frederick Douglass. And I ever surprised that the first two people who donated in the name of their son who had just passed was Elsie and Tony Souza right away. Now some people was a few people in there that were very helpful me getting this thing done, and I put their name on it because I think history should be true. They were very instrumental in me getting that. Now, subsequent to this, a couple of years ago, when the building was being rented out, and I knew very few people were going in, that placard that I owned with some other people who contributed to me, I donated it to the Frederick Douglass House at UMass Dartmouth with
Hmm.
the contingency that if they ever took it down or could not use it, it would come back to me. And so I took it down. They asked me, could I have somebody take it down? I said, no, I'll take it down because they want to know if I was capable. I said, well, I put it up, so I think I can take it down. And I took it down. It was in the display case as you walk in to your right. And so I took it down. But if you want to know where it is now, it's UMass Dartmouth, the Frederick Douglass House.
Okay, perfect. Um, the one of the things that I like is one of your quotes that stuck with me, and I'm gonna let you tell the story. Is when the local newspaper came up to you and asked why they can't get a story from you, and you gave the reporter a quote. If you remember that, could you tell the viewers about that story?
They asked me, now refresh my memory, was this to do with one of my events?
This was when they had asked you for a statement, and you said, "I'll give you something about give you a statement if you get it because you don't get it right or something like that." I remember it. It was it will come to me. Let me just. I don't want to kind of
Oh,
mess it
okay.
up.
Well, I can tell you why when they some people got together and they gave me that little brochure that I gave you,
Hmm.
where they recognized my 24 years of devoted service to the NAACP. at the Century House back in 2007, and people like Viola Pena,
Hmm.
former counselor,
Great
and
woman.
Cynthia Edwards, and
Great
several
woman.
other people who who got together and did it. And in fact, I got the program here.
Hmm.
The master of the ceremonies was Bruce A. Rose, and
Who's
at the
that?
main,
I don't know who
I
that is.
think you know that guy, right? You know him.
Yeah.
A rose is a rose. By any other name would smell as sweet, right?
Yes.
Uh, Invocation was done by Leona Fisher. Mark
Great.
Green was the president at that time. Joyce Williams was the president of Newport branch NAACP. Mr. John Reed, president of the Cape Cod branch.
Yes.
Mr. Juan Cofield was the president of New England Area Conference, all 22 branches. And now, Lee V. Charlton II, my grandson, was the
Hmm.
president of NAACP Youth Council back then.
Wow.
And some people who gave presentation was Mrs. Carmen Gamboa, who made a quilt with my likeness and some of my family members on it. My grandmother, Mrs. Cynthia no, Mrs. Cynthia Edwards,
Hmm.
and Mrs. Susan LaVenture, who gave many years as a secretary, treasurer, you name it. She served with distinction
So
for the
true.
NAACP. And
Great.
I can tell you that I told them, because I didn't ask for this presentation or to be honored, but if they invited any politicians who had spent 24 years stabbing me in the back, that I would leave. So no politicians got invited.
Good.
And that's the reason why, because I don't want them to give a misinterpretation of what they had done for myself or the NAACP. Although we had many that were good, and
Hmm.
I couldn't choose who would come and who would not come. And in lieu of that, I'd rather not have anyone that have someone misrepresenting the group. And that you heard from me, and that's exactly what I told them. If they come, I'm leaving. Okay.
Hmm. And
And
I, I can
and
understand.
I gather one of the reporters, I recall one of the reporters who did um, a belated once they heard. This was about 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, and it was close to, well, I'd say there was over 300 people there. And as quiet as it's kept, I kept a copy of that. That how can you have a quiet celebration when there was over 300 people there? And that's the reason it was quiet, because I didn't want any fanfare. I wanted the people who were allies and were true to the cause to be there. Why celebrate people who did not help you or in many cases actively worked against you?
Hmm.
So I would celebrate, and I also didn't take one from. I was asked if I wanted the celebration, traditional celebration from the school where I worked, and I think it would, that would be the height of hypocrisy if I asked those people, not knowing who would come and who would show. Many who might have come out of a guilt feeling. I refuse to have anything done by the institution that I gave my 22 plus years to. And as you see in the book there, Charlie, I found out one thing that I did 31 consecutive years without a sick day because people may say that I didn't do much, but they can't say I wasn't there.
That's so true.
So, but
You
I
know,
felt an obligation, and I look forward to going to school every day because to see young people come into an institution and not know how to turn on a light switch, and in 4 years they could wire that whole school was education and growth in itself. I watched people develop, and I watched the pride with which they did, and we had very little problems with vandalism in that school because they fixed things and repaired things and built things and created things at that school. And it's nothing like a vocational education. Now people are realizing that. Not
Hmm.
only did I see and appreciate what the kids did there, but I'm a recipient of all of that. I went to vocational schools in the state of Washington and in Oregon and in New York and in Florida and a few other places where I was stationed. The first thing I do once you clear the base, get education office, find out where the local technical school is. And it was very redeeming uh, to go to all of these different schools and get an education because there's nothing you can learn won't help you in some phase in your life.
True. So true. The we we talked about many things over the years, and one of the things that I've learned through the pamphlet you gave me, and reading through that, is that at a very very young age you was already determined to be a fighter, um, a leader, by example, and it just goes on and on, and until this day you're still doing the same thing. Um, where do you get that from?
Well, from
Who?
some strong women,
Hmm.
just like you said yourself, we are the product of strong women. Um, my father was a coal miner, and coal miners, many of them got a house close to the mine because I had one uncle who worked the same coal mine for 44 years. And if you ever seen, I got to let you see a copy of it, October Skies. That was based on some young people from that little town where I was born, Coalwood, West Virginia. It probably had a population of 400 or so. And in that movie, if you see it, it says these people, the people in the closest place was Welch. They think we hillbillies, and the one kid said, because we are. If you live in the hill, that makes you a hillbilly, and that's irregardless of color. And we lived in different little sections there when I was born in a coal miner's uh, uh, owned building. And the part of town I lived in, uh, they named it Mud Hole.
Hmm.
If you ask any people where he lived, they say, oh, he lives over in Mud Hole or
Hmm.
over in Snake Root. And they call it Snake Root for a reason. There's a bunch of rattlesnakes over there, And those people were workers.
Hmm.
They worked their whole life, and many of them died in the coal mine with the accidents, with silicosis, which I stated. My father was a victim. He left there, and he was a electrician in the coal mine when they could not find a white electrician. Once
Hmm.
they found one, he would have to train him and go back to drilling holes and blowing up coal seams.
Wow.
When he left there in the late 40s, because diesel was replacing coal as a fuel, and went to New York, he found out that his electrical background allowed him to be hired as the single male in a small manufacturing company, and the other people in that company were all, maybe a dozen people, were all women,
Hmm.
and they hired him because he had expertise and he was doing something that he was fully entitled to do and educated to do, and he was going to charge less than his white counterpart. And the women, they didn't hire men to make these step up transformers because they could pay a woman less than they could pay men.
Wow.
And that's the New York system. That's the United States system. Um, um, in New York, and it's been stated, and you may have heard it, down south, they didn't care how big you got, just don't get too close. And up north, they says they don't care how close you get, just don't get too big. So you could live if you had enough money, you could live next door if you had enough money. Down
Hmm.
south, they didn't care how much money you had your own little section, and that gets back to my grandmother, who was a live-in maid, and we had an apartment over some garages out back of the house. And I was raised in a white community. I couldn't play with the little white kids because if there was an argument, I was bound to lose. So I was not allowed to play with them. But
Hmm.
what I had to do, and my sister, who was a couple years older than me, she taught me how to read before I went to the first grade. Every Saturday, I got a comic book, so extensively I learned how to read out of comic books, and I taught myself how to be a free hand drawer. I could draw those books, and I got a pad of paper, a couple of pencils, and a comic book every Saturday, so I could amuse myself and read those comic books. And I read all of her books too, her school books. And so by the time I got to the first grade, yes, I could read.
Hmm.
And I said, well, if it was anything, it was good was the fact I was not allowed to mingle, and that was Welch, West Virginia. And the fellow that's on TV, he was from Welch, the comedian that, what's the program they have where they ask questions? Uh, Family Feud?
Yep.
Yeah, Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey.
Steve
Yep.
Steve Harvey is from the same place, Welch, West Virginia. His father was a coal miner. I read all of this after the fact, and
Hmm.
of course he's a few years younger. But in West Virginia, I can recall the first day of school. You after you got your book list, there would be a line of 300, 400 people because you had to buy your books. In West Virginia, they didn't give you anything. Some of the more, um I would say, prosperous counties, you could rent your books, but you didn't get free books. So everybody valued books, and I rarely saw a book without a book cover on it because Sunbeam Bread gave out free book covers. And
Okay.
you found what you did, you found someone. Um, okay.
No, go ahead,
So,
please. I'll
yeah, I
read
was
this to
just
you
reading
later.
something there. Um, some people made arrangement with if you had a neighbor who had a child in a grade ahead of you, you arranged to buy their books. And of course, you never dog eat a book, and you never left a book down because that was real money, you know.
Yep.
And we also had to rent our lockers in school. In West Virginia, they didn't give you anything but a chance. Okay, and so people were surprised when we integrated in 1956, and I was the first one who showed up to play football. And I had to go sign up ahead of time, and they told us whatever. And it was myself and a fellow named Frank Hightower. I think he is related to the Hightower that plays for the Patriots. But Franklin
Okay.
Hightower and I agreed. Was Frank's idea that we go play, but I only lived about less than 2 blocks away from the school.
Hmm.
But my neighbors on either side of me were white, and they didn't move out because we moved in. And so I showed up to play football. Well, I got there on time, and was about 100 guys in the locker room and all the noise. And I walked in the door, and it became absolutely quiet. You could hear a mouse walking on cotton
Hmm.
when I walked in the door, and they saw me. And they all around us on the wall, they had these signs, inspirational signs. And one I still remember. It says, "We furnish everything here but guts."
Hmm.
And that was in October, not October, that was August 15th, 1956. And I
Hmm.
can tell you, I got a hard way to go
Hmm.
because when some of your own ex schoolmates thought you deserted them, they thought that you were leaving because you wanted to leave for whatever reason, and it wasn't. I know that was the future of education. You're gonna have to compete against them for a job. So that's Frank and I went down, and we were gonna play football because we both played football for Douglas.
Hmm.
And I can tell you that although I played, uh, what one of our second string quarterback told us, rinky-dinks, we ran all the plays. And one time in particular, I was playing I always ran the suicide play that the other team was going to pull. We got to film. We traded film with other teams, and we knew when they got 10 yards out or whatever, who they going to give the ball to. We recognized their formation from looking at film. And I can recall one incident where I was given the ball, and everybody knew where I was going. They knew which hole I was running through. The only thing they didn't know was the count. And they ran that play 4 times. And the first time I scored, and the coach chewed them out. The second
Hmm.
time I scored, and the coach just jumped all over them. The third time, uh, they gave me the ball. Everybody's knowing, and I scored again. But the last time, he got him so upset that this is the only time I ever went home, and my mother, who was not squeamish, because I came out of that. I scored the fourth time, but somebody stomped my hand. They mashed my head down to took the first layer of skin off, and I went home that evening, and my mother said to me, "I think they're trying to kill you." Okay, and they decided that nobody was going to be you uh, was going to be a hero looking like me. So I went to all the practices. I went to all the out of town trips and the whole bit. But I never got in a game until the last play of the last game.
Hmm.
And we had scored, and we were kicking off of them, and it was less than a minute to go. And I got a call to go in the game. Well, I don't know who made the first tackle of the year, but the only play I got into with less than a minute to play, I made the last tackle of the year in 1956. The only time that they put me in. And I had been called over by the editor of the newspaper whose son was our quarterback and who told me that nobody ran the ball better than me. But I never
Hmm.
got a chance to do it. The second year, I was told by the line coach to come play defense because they were, now this is going against the grain. He told me they were not giving me a fair shake running fullback. So I made first team as a defensive linebacker. And we had one other guy, name was Tillett,
Hmm.
of color, that was on the team. And I told him during practice that when they blow the whistle for the first play, if I'm not on the first team, that I was going to turn in my uniform, and he said he was too. But when they blew the whistle, we both was on the first team,
Awesome.
and he wound up, I think, playing and going to college from Iowa, and I wound up when I didn't get my one scholarship I wanted. First one was Marshall. I also got one to Kentucky State, and but I decided, well, let me go and take some go somewhere where I can go to school at night. The military is going to send me to school, so that's how I made my decision. But the school that I had left, Douglas, they sent a scout up to my house, and and along come a paper where I was to report. They were going to get me a job and told me only thing I needed to bring was a pillowcase and my bedding,
Hmm.
and that was to Kentucky State, you know.
Wow.
But these things work out, and I got through that. I got to between that the NAACP and a few other organizations. I've seen 43 states and a few countries. And if you keep your eyes open, you learn something everywhere you go that you can use.
Exactly. You now it led to the military and the military experience, your honorable service. Um, you received some inspiration and some gratitude to the NAACP. And there's a story behind that. Could you tell me that story?
Well, I was out in Oregon, Klamath Falls, Oregon, and my wife came to me one day and she says, we were living on the street there, and I had not seen a person of color living on that street. And the first summer day, I'm driving down my street to have my windows down, And I see a little kid on the extreme end of the block where I was, and I rolled down, and she was transfixed. She was staring at me, and I says hi, and she says hi, the N word,
Mm-hmm.
and I said someone had to tell her that. I was a little disappointed in that. But anyway, my wife told me, she says, there's another colored family around here somewhere. I saw the child, and tomorrow I'm going to follow them home. And she followed them home, and it was people from Arkansas. I think they had 5 kids, and they were career path. And they introduced us to another family. So we would have functions together, and it was, again, in August. One of the youngsters was having a birthday party, and I think it was about 8 kids between the 3 families. And the 2 other airmen and myself decided to step across the street. Directly across the street was a little bar, and we went in there to have a drink, a cold drink, summertime. So we asked for a pitcher of beer, and we were given a pitcher of beer, and we sat down and drank the beer. So, let's have another. We sent one fellow from Arkansas up to the table, and he came back and he had this strange look on his face, and he says, they said they're out of beer. What's the likelihood of them being out of beer in a beer garden in a small little town like that, half the size of Fairhaven?
Mm-hmm.
And so this one guy from Baltimore says, here, it's $10. Bring us back a bottle. I'm not cheap. And at that point, the proprietor says, if are these to go? And he says, no. The only way I will sell you a beer is to go. So we finished what we had in the pitcher of beer. And the first inclination was to throw the furniture around or whatever. But we all 3 of us career airmen, because I was coming up on 8 years. I was going to be re-enlisting shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, it didn't happen. Uh, we contacted NAACP in Klamath Falls, Oregon. The NAACP in Klamath Falls, Oregon was about 70% white. And they took our case over and they called in the Alcohol Beverage Commission, and they sent a person up and they asked if we would do that again and why this person would come in and sit nearby. Well, they were running a radar mission up on the base, and I had to be up there, but the other 2 guys went, and they did the same thing. And the fellow pulled out his credentials and told him he was from the Alcohol Beverage Commission, and they could not selectively deny anyone. And the lady says she didn't want her place to turn into a dive. That's why she refused the service.
Mm-hmm.
The ironic thing about this lady was a full-fledged Klamath Indian, 100% Indian. Okay?
Wow.
When I first got there and I went to the education office and I signed up for some classes downtown and in automotive, I took up electric ignition and carburation. That's the only thing open at that time of the year, because I had quit the other technical school, and because I had to move. And the guy asked me at the desk, was a ha. He says, "Say, Sergeant, what do you want, the regular price or do you want the Indian price?" And I said, "Well, what's the Indian price?" And he said, "That's twice the regular price." Ha ha ha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this lady is she's doing this to me. And just before I got there, maybe a year or two, because the Klamath Indians never signed a treaty with the United States government, and they were never defeated. The government took their land and they sold it. So by the time I got there a year earlier, every man, woman, and child in Klamath Falls got $42,000 from the federal government. And that is said about, might as well just handed it to all the vendors in town because they overcharged them for everything. But I got called into, once this article came, it showed up in the paper, and I got called into the commander's office, and he says, "Well, go ahead and take care of that hearing that you got downtown." He says, "But you can't wear your uniform." Okay. The other two guys they had been in longer than I had. They were all working on their third enlistment, and I was working on my second one. I was coming up on 8 years. They were over 10 years, and they were not going to get out of service and dump 10 years or 12 years. But I outranked them, but that's just because of the career field.
Hmm.
And so we went to the hearing, and they were told the same thing by their commander, which meant the base commander told the two other commanders and my commander not to embarrass the Air Force by letting us go down with our Class A uniform on. Okay?
Wow.
And so I told my wife, start packing. I says, if I can't wear this uniform downtown, uh, that's it. We
Hmm.
were required at one time to wear it downtown to show the monetary impact we had. One time they paid everybody in $2 bills to show the impact that we had financially on that town. They did various things like that to kowtow to the locals. But when it came to stand by us, when we were being discriminated against on base, I was told that I could not wear my uniform. And I said, that's it. And that's the reason why I was not a retiree.
Hmm.
And, this is based on, I don't know if I put it in this book, but my uncle got the Medal of Honor in Korea. And it took him 57 years to bury him in Arlington. Okay?
Wow.
So, it's it is such intertwined racism in America. And that's why we have to fight it wherever it is and however we can. And well, just like women, I gave my speech in 2012 at BCC, Bristol Community College, was gender bias.
Hmm.
And I made a statement there. And I asked a question: who is the most discriminated against person on the face of the earth? And I says, I'm going to answer it for you. It's not a man and it's not a black man. It's a woman, period. This is ever since the apple, so called.
Hmm.
Women have been left out, overlooked, denied, and what have you. Then I asked another question: why can't we have a 50-50 relationship with the gender that produces 100% of the population? Well, I didn't get the correct answer from anybody on any of those. Okay? And I like to ask that question currently. Why
Hmm.
can't we have that 50-50 relationship?
So true. It wow. That's profound. That's definitely
Well, I had someone from the Catholic Church come up to me and ask me why didn't I ask the church that? I said, that's some heavy stuff, and Pope Francis is working on it.
Mhm.
I have the greatest respect for the man, and I understand why uh, my wife was named Frances because she was the promised child. Her father
Mhm.
was in a sanatorium down in Taunton,
Mhm.
and her mother said if he survived and got out of that sanatorium for TB, that she would have one more child, and that child was Frances, who was good to everybody,
Yeah.
especially uh, all her nieces and nephews. The mother and father might turn them down, but they could see Auntie Frances, and she never failed.
How did how did how did a young man from West Virginia meet a young lady from New Bedford? How did that come about?
Well, thanks to the Air Force, I was sent here from Headquarters Air Defense Command in Colorado Springs. And the place where they sent me was they call them Texas Towers. They're not in Texas, but they're built the same idea as those platforms drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, except we had radar on ours.
Hmm.
And this is based on a survey and some information from MIT saying early warning radar should be beyond the horizon where it wouldn't be anything in front of it. So we had two, well, originally it was going to be five towers. They actually only built three, and technology exceeded uh, what they were doing. By the time it was semi-automatic, by the time they built three of them, technology had surpassed what they were built for. We had the Connies flying out of Otis. That was airborne radar. We had the picket ships. That was the floating radar. And we were on Georgia Shoals, 110 miles east of Chatham. I
Hmm.
originally, my orders was for Stewart Air Force Base in New York, but helicopters couldn't fly that far then. So they put us as close as they could, which was Falmouth. And the old choppers, received, uh, they were 20-man choppers, but they would only let 10 of us go at a time because of their limited range being a receive. And they sent two choppers instead of one because 10 in each one. And while one refueled, the other one would hover and drop off his passenger. And, you know, the fact is, uh, flying 110 miles east of Chatham. We used to fly from Falmouth to Chatham to get the last drop of fuel we could to get out there.
Hmm.
And when the revolution came, when they put in turbines, then we could make it. But if it was not a flying day, weather-wise, we took a boat in. So it was 18 hours on a boat or 55 minutes on a chopper. Okay. We like to go out there on the boat because for 18 hours we didn't have any duties. And when we were coming in for our 10 days off, we couldn't get in here fast enough to start our 10 days. But
Hmm.
I came in uh, uh, for relaxation and recreation, R&R. We came to New Bedford. We used to do the scene on Cape Cod and any other place where they played music, and New Bedford was a great place for music. We had all of these, the band club. You've had the West End Social. You had a five or six that you could go, and then they had downtown. What was the one now? It is now a coffee shop, but that was the Piccadilly Lounge. I
Hmm.
saw world class entertainment there
Yes.
that used to come to the Piccadilly. So we'd come to New Bedford. I would go to out to Falmouth, Zach's and Falmouth. I knew where all the places were, the Wigwam and in Mashpee. I knew where all these places were. If you like music, you hung with us. That's what we went into to go to the music. And I celebrated my 22nd birthday in the Blue Flame.
Hmm.
We then we went skinny dipping and John's Pond. But no, that's how I met my wife. Is when I came in and I met her up on of all places on Cedar Street. Uh, Couple of blocks down from where the NAACP is now. Her sister lived there where the playground is. And I met her there. And so after that, I stopped going to Queens when I got my 10 days off or to Harlem. And because I had a place in New Bedford, I would come to New Bedford and babysit for people. And they might let me stay. And my wife was working there. And when she got off from work, would go listen to music somewhere. But that's originally how it started. And that's how I got to meet the lady from New Bedford, Mass. And she lived at 38 Russell Street. I think you knew some people live at 38 Russell Street.
Yes. Yes. Great. I still, I
You
always
still
wanted
do,
to,
yeah.
I always wanted to buy that house just for that reason. I
Well,
always,
I tell you, I started the South Central Community Development Corporation. We bought that house and sold it.
wow.
Okay, we bought that house, and my daughter-in-law worked on that house, as a student from Volk. I got her hired because she was an excellent worker. That's why I thought she should be a Charlton. Because I watched
Hmm.
her work at Volk, and I says, "Who's the little girl out working the guys?" And they says, "Oh, that's Lisa, Lisa
What up?
Gomes." I says, and then I introduced her to the people in the South Central Community Development Corporation because we were uh, buying houses and selling, reselling them to people. And we got Liz DiCarlo and Viola. I think a couple of houses we were able to. And I took for 7 years. I had the keys to the Green School. Every time they broke a window in the Green School, they called me. And I don't know why it was coincidental, but it happened to be every Sunday when it was a football game on, and I had to go down and block off a window. But all the neighbors knew for 7 years who had the keys to the Green School. But
Hmm.
look at what purpose the Green School is playing now. And there's
Yes.
also a place in there for historic little history place for Cape Verdeans. We designed it when we did that building. We made a room especially for that.
Wow.
Somebody should get around to that.
I,
It
w-
has a special alarm and everything in it. But no, that's how I got to New Bedford. That's my history, and I stick to it.
yes. That's some great history, and thank God. Cedar. So now, Cedar Street is just that's you. When and you talk about your family, you definitely got to bring up Cedar Street no matter what. It
Well,
brought.
Cedar Street, I can tell you that Cedar Street, when I went in there, the NAACP was not allowed to acquire property until 1984 when they bought their property down in Baltimore.
Hmm.
Uh, Somehow, someone thought that if you didn't own any property, they couldn't sue you. Well, the people down in Mississippi proved that wrong. But
Hmm.
anyway, I went up to the building, and it took me 10 years to get the $55,000 in taxes that was levied on them by the city council down here. Because they said they had not filed the proper papers, and of course, legally they hadn't. But working with Representative Strauss, the federal government, the state government, Secretary of State, I got to know more. I got an education on what not to do.
Yeah.
And we settled that, and I got all the paperwork on when John Bullitt, thanks to John Bullitt, God give the man credit. John Bullitt sent a lady down from the assessor's office, and we worked out a deal where we found out that we didn't owe that. And in retrospect, we got all of those taxes abated, but I think there was only 5,500 rather than 55,000. And I worked with people and got the money and paid that off. And I got the paper right here in my office here at home stating that from Representative Strauss saying congratulations after 10 years. And Strauss did the work. He did the work. I did everything I was told. I had to go get an audit. I had to get a bookkeeper, a licensed, person who did that. Uh, Touched all the bases, and we got it done. So that's why I says, it's not easy. It is not
Oh,
easy to get anything done that should be done. And
you do.
sometimes you have to come over and look at my office because I'm loaded with all that paperwork. I left
I
it in the files up there, but I got copies.
I like to do that this week coming up. I like to
Oh,
do.
by all means, come in. Come on in.
I would. I'm just gonna tell my wife, give me a friendly reminder. I'm gonna make that happen. I'll call you first, and we can set
She'll,
that up.
she'll yank your chain, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
They're good for that. I used to come home in the evening and my wife would tell me, well, you got 3 meetings.
Mhm. She definitely.
She signed me up for them too. She's the
Yeah.
one that signed me
Definitely.
up. I was Title One, president of Title One here. And the only reason they made me president of Title One, I was the only man that showed up at the meetings. And they would have to hold a meeting to 7 o'clock because it took me, I didn't get back in town to 7 o'clock. I worked in Boston.
Wow. Yeah. That. You've been around throughout my life, and I remember the experience of participating in the NAACP Axel Award, program,
Yeah,
and
you are our port. You are our port. Yeah.
I love
Uh-huh. Yeah.
well, and in
I got
fact,
your book. I got your book. So,
well, I got plenty more. I definitely I gotta get my books out there because it's at 15 now, so I need to get some more out there. And
oh yeah, I need them. Hey, if you come over, I got a library. My dining room, what was my dining room, is now my library. I got to get you over here.
I will. I'll be there. Paul Gomes says he remembers the sign Lee's Bees.
I got it in my house.
Okay.
Well, that I had that in school, and that's
Hmm.
because I went to school with the Seabees. The Air Force sent me to school with the Seabees, and uh, because the Air Force no longer had a school for steam engineering, pipe fitting, and what have you. And I just love their attitude, uh, which means that we have done so much for so long for so little. Now we can do anything with nothing. So I adopted that, and I had the sign. I had to show you the sign. I had the art class do it, and I put it over my door.
Hmm.
And underneath it says, "We service the best," meaning best faculty, the best student body, the best everything at vocational. And I have 6 of those bricks up there if you ever go up there, named after my family members because I believe in voc like that is salvation for so many people. If you got a vocation, you can live. But you got to be able to exchange something. It's time that we gave up being the fools, the mules, and the tools that sell drugs. Or without a profession, you got to do whatever they don't want to do.
Hmm.
And I found out, you know, by having a profession, and I took all the courses they had up at Voc. In fact, I made the largest course ever made at vocational because I took that too. So Charlie, got to get you into my house. I know our time must be running close.
Hmm. It it's a little past an hour, but feel free. You want to tell another story? That's up to you.
But
I
yeah, I I advise a lot of people who are in the lockup at in the sheriff's department. I found a number where they could call, and I can call for them. But there is a legal firm with lawyers. They could call on Mondays, and I had several complaints from you can imagine. And I write them a letter and put the number. They had to call, and they had to be on Mondays between the hour of 1 and 4 o'clock, but they had to plead their own case.
hmm
And I've had some dillies, and like I say, spending this time putting all of this documents together because it'll make a good book for somebody one of these years. On how I was able to do what I was because I had lots of help from people like yourself.
Thank you, thank you, and thanks for being a mentor, a leader, and I'm very, very honored to definitely know you, be around your family. You know, your son and your daughter has definitely been great, great people to me over the years. Um, your daughter-in-law, we've been friends since I think wow, first grade, maybe second grade. So we go back a long, long time, and I'm very proud of Lee. Not little Lee anymore.
No, 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 no.
That's a grown man and doing great
You
things.
got great skills, and he used them. And thanks to Volk, he's supposed to be a plumber, but you see what he's doing, right? He's plumbing on computers.
Mhm.
I think he stretched it, didn't he?
Yeah, pays the
There,
bills, right?
there's no limit to what you can do if you apply.
Exactly, exactly. So, another great podcast. Thanks to you, and I really, really appreciate it. Um, and anytime you want to come on here again, we're definitely going to invite you.
Now, I got to get your schedule because now my grandson had taught me how to Now, I worked for IBM for 5 years, headquarters computer division, so I should be more versed in this than I am. But
Um,
and we invented the personal computers right down there where I was, and you'd be very surprised that the fellow with many of uh, the invention that have he owns the inventions is a person of color, and he was in the same building I was in New York.
wow.
And I never met him when I was there, but I met
Mhm.
a lot of bright people. And they gave me a test, and they sent me back here. And the only way I could get back here was to go to school in Waltham to be a customer engineer for IBM. They gave me
Wow.
that opportunity. Okay. And that was one of the nice letters I think I submitted when I went for the plant engineer's job was a letter from the president of IBM saying this guy is a good worker. He knows what
Awesome.
he's doing. Yeah. So it's hard to beat that. But Charlie, again, it's reciprocal. Thank you for what you're doing and what you've done for so long, and made me look good because when you were looking to become a resource officer, I put you on the top of the list. You and Rita. I said you can't find two better ones than this, and it was true.
I
Who's Hazel
appreciate it.
Brittle?
Hazel Brito. Yes, good
We
woman.
know
Yes.
Hazel. Hazel.
Yes, Hazel. Awesome.
Hazel. Well, she was.
Definitely.
My wife used to call her little sister, my little
Hmm.
sister, the good friend.
Yeah.
But
She's
okay,
that's
oh yeah,
let me see. Got another.
okay, people chipping in, huh?
Yeah. Sending his love. All right. Well, Mr. Mr. Charlton, we're definitely gonna do this again, and I'll see
Okay,
you the coming week. God bless.
okay, just let me know. I'm here all the time. I'm quarantined. I got one shot. I'm due for the second one on the 7th, and then I won't be contagious
Okay.
or a
I'll definitely.
recipient.
All right. Yeah. So I'll definitely talk to you after the fourth. That's what I'll do, man.
Okay, thanks again for the invite, and
Thank
thanks
you
for
very
what
much.
you're doing for the community.
Thank you also. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye. Good night.
Good night. Great show again. Thanks to the guests. The guests make this show possible, and I'm very happy to have them on here. Um, you know, it's yep, well done, Uncle Lee. That's definitely he was well done. Stories are unbelievable, and that's just a small part of the knowledge that comes from that man. And I really appreciate him and all that he's done. Um, good, bad, or ugly. Sometimes we don't all don't agree, and but you got to stand by people that are there, people that are doing things like volunteering and actually standing up for things. And Lee's been there to stand up. So thank you very much. Thank you all for viewing and listening to the Really Charlie podcast. We have another one coming up, this week. So stay tuned and God bless everyone. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.